Hello everyone and welcome to this video. Today we're talking 3 true camping horror stories, where sleeping bags become cocoons of dread and rustling leaves whisper chilling warnings. Before starting the camping horror stories, please like this video, tell us in the comments which story you liked, and subscribe our YouTube channel for more horror stories. Story number 1. Grayson, fueled by the siren song of adventure and a backpack stocked with youthful hubris, stood at the trailhead, Oregon's whispering wilderness beckoning before him. His escape from the concrete grid of Seattle was complete, replaced by towering Douglas firs and the damp, mossy breath of the forest floor. He hadn't planned on staying long, just a weekend escape to test his wilderness mettle. Little did he know, the woods had plans of their own. The first day was a postcard, sunlight dappling the forest floor, birdsong a constant melodic hum. He set up his campsite beside a gurgling stream, the scent of pine filling his lungs. But as twilight bled into night, an unsettling shift occurred. The birdsong faded, replaced by a disconcerting silence, broken only by the rustle of unseen creatures and the unnerving hoots of distant owls. As cold fingers of fear snaked down his spine, Grayson noticed it, the whispers. Faint at first, like leaves rustling in the wind, they seemed to emanate from everywhere and nowhere at once. Words he couldn't decipher, yet filled with a primal dread, slithered into his ears, worming their way into his mind. He tried to ignore them, focusing on the crackling fire, but the whispers grew louder, insistent, weaving tales of forgotten gods and hungry shadows. Sleep was a fitful, fevered dream. Every rustle, every crack of a twig sent him jolting awake, heart hammering against his ribs. The whispers continued, growing bolder, forming sentences his subconscious scrambled to translate. They spoke of the forest as a living entity, a hungry maw with an insatiable appetite for those who dared disturb its slumber. Morning brought no solace. The sun, filtering through the dense canopy, seemed pale and anemic, the shadows deeper, more malevolent. The whispers, now tinged with desperation, pleaded with him to leave, to turn back before it was too late. Ignoring the rising tide of paranoia, Grayson pressed on, driven by a twisted combination of fear and defiance. He pushed deeper into the woods, the path dwindling to a barely discernible track. The whispers intensified, a cacophony of voices tearing at his sanity. He saw things, fleeting glimpses of figures wreathed in shadow, eyes glowing like embers in the gloom. Fear, raw and primal, clawed at his throat, the urge to flee overwhelming. Then he stumbled upon it, a clearing carved by some unseen hand. In the center, under the accusing gaze of the ancient trees, stood a crumbling stone altar, moss-covered and dripping with an unnatural ichor. The whispers reached a crescendo, a chilling chorus demanding a sacrifice, a price for his trespass. Panic consumed him. He stumbled back, tripping over gnarled roots, eyes frantically searching for escape. But the trail had vanished, the forest a maze of towering pines and mocking whispers. He was trapped. As the shadows of the encroaching dusk stretched long and menacing, a figure emerged from the darkness. Tall and skeletal, draped in rags that seemed to writhe with dark energy, it grinned with jagged teeth. The whispers became a single, chilling voice, emanating from the figure. "You are mine now, trespasser." Grayson, fear-paralyzed, could only watch as the creature stalked towards him, its eyes burning with unholy hunger. In that moment, a primal scream clawed its way out of his throat, a desperate prayer for salvation. And then, from the depths of the forest, a counterpoint to the chilling voices, a howl, ancient and powerful, sending shivers down the creature's spine. The shadows trembled, the air crackled with unseen energy. A pack of wolves, their fur the color of moonlight, emerged from the trees, eyes blazing with an otherworldly light. The creature recoiled, fear replacing its predatory grin. It hissed and spat curses, but the wolves were upon it, a whirlwind of fangs and fury. The clearing became a battleground, the screams of the creature drowned out by the snarls of the pack. As the struggle reached its climax, the wolves, one by one, fell silent, their fur stained crimson. But still, they pressed on, driven by an unseen force. Finally, with a bone-shattering roar, the creature crumpled, dissolving into a swirling vortex of shadow that vanished into the depths of the forest. Silence descended, broken only by the panting of the remaining wolves. They stared at Grayson, their eyes holding a strange wisdom, then melted back into the darkness, leaving him alone in the clearing. He stumbled back to the trail, legs shaking, his mind reeling. The whispers were gone, replaced by a deafening silence. He emerged from the woods, the familiar sight of asphalt and streetlights a jarring contrast to the nightmare he'd just lived through. Story number 2. The silence of the Montana wilderness pressed against Mason's eardrums like a physical weight. He knelt by the sputtering campfire, the flames barely flickering against the encroaching darkness. His friends, Sarah and Liam, slept huddled in their tents, oblivious to the creeping unease that coiled in Mason's gut. They'd set out for a weekend camping trip, seeking solace in the pristine expanse of Glacier National Park. But something about the dense pine forests and moss-draped boulders felt off, an ancient tension simmering beneath the surface of tranquility. As the campfire dwindled, a sound like distant chanting snaked through the trees, rhythmic and foreign. Mason strained his ears, heart hammering against his ribs. The chanting grew louder, weaving through the whispering wind, carrying a primal tremor that sent shivers down his spine. He nudged Sarah awake, whispering of the chant. Her sleepy eyes widened with alarm as the sound crescendoed, echoing from every direction. Liam stirred, confusion morphing into terror as he too heard the guttural murmur. They huddled together, fear gnawing at their camaraderie. The chanting pulsed around them, vibrating in the air itself. Then, from the depths of the forest, a flicker of movement. A silhouette, tall and skeletal, emerged from the darkness, illuminated by an eerie bioluminescent glow emanating from its body. More figures followed, their elongated limbs twisting in an alien dance, eyes burning with an unnatural crimson light. The chanting intensified, a wave of psychic pressure pressing against their minds, whispering promises of oblivion. Panic seized Liam. He stumbled to his feet, screaming, and bolted into the forest. Sarah grabbed Mason's arm, her eyes pleading, "Don't leave him!" But a primal voice inside Mason urged him to run. He hesitated, torn between loyalty and self-preservation. Then, seeing the hunger in the crimson eyes closing in, he yielded to the instinct. He pulled Sarah to her feet, dragging her towards their car, the chanting a maddening soundtrack to their terror. The skeletal figures pursued, their movements swift and silent, their whispers slithering into their minds, eroding their resolve. Mason reached the car, throwing open the door just as Sarah tripped. He pulled her in, scrambling after her as the closest figure lunged, its bony fingers scraping against the window. He slammed the engine to life, tires squealing as they shot forward, leaving their friend and the chanting behind. They drove through the night, fear a living presence in the car. Each rustle in the trees, each flicker of headlights bouncing off shadows, sent tremors through their bodies. They barely spoke, the unspoken guilt hanging heavy in the air. As dawn broke, painting the sky in soft hues of pink and orange, they stumbled into a small town, collapsing into a greasy diner booth. Coffee sloshed in their trembling hands, their faces gaunt and haunted. Days turned into weeks, the nightmare clinging to them like a second skin. Every creak in their apartment, every whisper of wind, carried echoes of the chanting. They clung to the hope that Liam had escaped, but the silence on their calls was a deafening answer. One night, Mason woke to a pulsating glow emanating from the window. He crept towards it, heart hammering against his ribs, to see a skeletal figure with crimson eyes staring back. Its lips contorted into a gruesome smile, and the familiar chanting washed over him, drowning out his terrified scream. He woke up in a hospital bed, Sarah by his side, her eyes filled with a mixture of relief and despair. The doctors attributed it to a stress-induced hallucination, a symptom of their shared trauma. But Mason knew the truth. He saw the flickering shadows at the edge of his vision, heard the faint whispers carried on the wind. He knew they were still out there, waiting for the next full moon, the next vulnerable soul to lure into their chilling symphony of darkness. And though he carried the scars of that night, the memory of Liam's scream a permanent echo in his mind, Mason wouldn't let fear paralyze him. He would learn their language, unravel their secrets, and find a way to fight back. The wilderness had claimed one friend, but it wouldn't claim another, not without a fight. For in the end, it wasn't just Liam they had lost in the shadow of Glacier National Park. They had lost a piece of their innocence, replaced by a chilling awareness of the darkness that lurks beneath the surface of beauty, the whispers that dance on the edge of perception, waiting for the unwary to stumble into their chilling embrace. The camping trip might be over, but the echoes of the night, the memory of the skeletal figures and their crimson eyes, would forever resonate in their hearts, a grim reminder of the unseen horrors that dwell in the wilderness, waiting for their next song to begin. Story number 3. Aidan, a city dweller with lungs starved for wilderness air, stood at the edge of Yellowstone National Park, Wyoming, his backpack heavy with anticipation. He craved the silence, the smell of pine, the unfiltered communion with nature he'd only glimpsed in documentaries. He yearned to escape the cacophony of the concrete jungle, to lose himself in the embrace of ancient trees and star-dusted skies. He pitched his tent by a placid mountain lake, the obsidian mirror reflecting the last gasps of sunlight. As dusk cast long, inky fingers across the landscape, Aidan felt a thrill of solitude, a delicious detachment from the clamor of his life. He built a crackling fire, the flames dancing like spectral marionettes against the encroaching darkness. Sleep came late, a restless whisper under the weight of the unfamiliar silence. He woke to an unsettling symphony, a cacophony of chittering and scratching, emanating from the dense undergrowth beyond the firelight's reach. It sent shivers down his spine, prickling his skin with a primal fear. Tentatively, Aidan stepped into the darkness, the firelight shrinking to a faint ember behind him. He stumbled upon a clearing dominated by an ancient oak, its gnarled limbs clawing at the sky like skeletal fingers. As he shone his light upon its trunk, his blood ran cold. Carved into the bark, crude yet unmistakable, were symbols, swirling tendrils that seemed to writhe and pulsate in the flickering beam. He recognized them, a chilling echo from a forbidden book he'd skimmed in a dusty bookstore, a book detailing ancient rituals and forgotten deities. Panic clawed at Aidan's throat. He spun around, heart hammering against his ribs, but the darkness behind him was absolute. The chittering had died, replaced by a suffocating silence broken only by the distant hooting of an owl. He stumbled back towards the campfire, the symbols seared into his mind, a haunting premonition of something ancient and malevolent stirring in the woods. The night stretched into an eternity of terror. Every rustle, every whisper carried the echo of those monstrous symbols, the promise of unseen eyes watching him from the depths of the forest. Dawn, when it finally arrived, offered little solace. The air seemed heavier, choked by an unseen menace, the sunlight struggling to penetrate the oppressive canopy. Driven by a desperate need to escape, Aidan packed his tent and began a frantic hike towards the park exit. But the deeper he ventured, the more twisted the path became, as if the forest itself conspired to keep him trapped. He found himself circling the same landmarks, the ancient oak, a morbid beacon, its grotesque symbols mocking him from the shadows. Exhausted and delirious, Aidan stumbled upon a hidden cave mouth nestled amidst the roots of the oak. A morbid curiosity pulled him towards it, a perverse hope that it might offer a way out. As he crawled into the darkness, the symbols on the tree seemed to shimmer, almost beckoning him in. The cave was a labyrinth of tunnels, the air thick with the smell of damp earth and something else, a cloying metallic tang that twisted his gut. The way ahead was lit by strange bioluminescent fungi, casting an eerie, otherworldly glow upon the rough-hewn walls. Then he heard it, a guttural chanting, a chorus of rasping voices rising from the depths of the cavern. The symbols from the oak danced before his eyes, pulsating with a monstrous light. Panic tore through him, forcing him to scramble back, desperately seeking escape. But it was too late. The darkness writhed, coalescing into a grotesque parody of humanity. Slender, impossibly tall figures with skin like bark and eyes like embers emerged from the shadows, their voices weaving a tapestry of nightmares. They were the denizens of the symbols, the ancient entities he had unwittingly awakened. Aiden cried out, a primal scream swallowed by the cavern's oppressive silence. He stumbled over loose rocks, falling into a hidden crevice, adrenaline propelling him deeper into the unknown. The chanting pursued him, echoing through the darkness, a terrifying symphony of malevolent hunger. He landed hard on a cold stone floor, gasping for breath. His headlamp flickered, revealing a vast cavern, its walls adorned with the same monstrous symbols. But in the center of the cavern, bathed in an otherworldly light, stood a towering monolith, carved with the same glyphs. Our horror stories are over. Please like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more horror stories. Thanks for watching.